Bespoken Spirits is a modern spirits company blending technology and tradition to take craft spirits to entirely new heights. Their unique craft maturation process unlocks amazing flavor combinations while reducing the environmental impact of each sip. The process is all natural and uses only the highest quality ingredients carefully sourced from the best mills, coopers, and distilleries. The result is an unparalleled flavor experience and something you can feel good about drinking. But don't take our word for it, try it yourself. Bespoken Spirits award-winning products can be purchased through retailers or online. Learn more at www.bespokenspirits.com.
With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
There's a new award-winning 4-grain straight bourbon whiskey that's been taking the market by storm, Penelope Bourbon. Penelope's balanced yet flavorful taste profile comes from a unique blend of 3 bourbon mash bills. Currently available in 3 expressions, 4-grain, barrel strength, and toasted, Penelope is remarkably smooth and flavorful. So whether you're sipping neat or using it in your favorite cocktail, Penelope is perfect for you. Penelope Bourbon is available throughout Kentucky, as well as select markets and online at penelopebourbon.com.
Proudly made in the USA and inspired by the American lifestyle, Country Smooth Bourbon was developed by the first female founder and CEO of an American bourbon whiskey company as a refined experience to be savored on its own or enjoyed in cocktails. We are dedicated to celebrating the spirit of America and the crafting of premium bourbon whiskey. To learn more, visit countrysmooth.com, where you can order online or find a retailer near you. Cheers. Country Smooth. Female founded, country grounded.
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me, as always, is my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing?
Hey, Mark, I'm doing really great. How are you this evening?
I'm doing great, man. I've been looking forward to this show for a couple of months now, so I'm really excited that we're here and that we're going to get to drink through some great whiskey tonight and talk with someone that I consider to be a legend in the industry. So this will be a lot of fun. But I do want to thank our sponsors, of course, before we do that. So thanks to all of our sponsors, and of course, we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Bespoken Spirits. So we appreciate their support of us as well. Matt, for birthdays, man, we don't have any Barrel Society members' birthdays this week, believe it or not. So nobody to announce there. And with that said, man, we can jump right into the show.
Absolutely. I think we need to, because we have had these bottles sitting around for too long. I've been eyeing them every time I come over here. We haven't been able to dip our little fingers
I know,
in
I haven't
there
cracked
yet.
them. I have not, Greg, we've not cracked these at all. So we've been waiting for this moment. So we're pretty excited. So yeah, go ahead, Matt. Tell everybody who we got with us, man.
All right, let's get right down to it. We do have one of the legends of the industry joining us this evening, afternoon, morning, whenever it is you are tuning into the Bourbon Life Podcast. We have the Master Distiller of Old Elk Distillery, Greg Metze. Greg, welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I can tell you true that I've been really looking forward to chatting you folks up and talking about Old Elk and tasting through our products. So it's going to be a good show.
Great. Well, I hate that we've never had the opportunity to meet one another, but I'm happy that we got the chance, at least virtually tonight. And hopefully one of these days we'll all get the opportunity to sit down together and have some pours in person, because that's always a little more fun. But this will work out great for us tonight. So first up, we got poured up your. I got my list backwards here. So we got the wheat whiskey. So Greg, do you want to tell our listeners what we're going to be drinking on this first round?
Absolutely. So the first in the lineup tonight is one of the 4 categories that we bring to market and bring to the consumers. And the first one's going to be our wheat whiskey, which is a 95% wheat, 5% malt mash bill. So,
Okay.
we'll probably get into the story later, but, when Old Elk and I were talking 5 or 7 years back, when I was still Master Distiller at MGP, they were asking, what I thought would be the next up and coming whiskeys, 6-7 years down the road, which is where we are now.
Yeah.
And so in those discussions, we talked that wheat bourbon and wheat whiskey were really somewhat untapped. And so we decided that we wanted to go large on the wheated content of both those categories. So the first one that we're going to taste through, again, is our wheat whiskey. And it's a 95% wheat, 5% malt.
Okay. So yeah, this is a high, very, very high wheat content. I mean, it's all wheat and a little bit of barley, but Matt, what are you picking up on this one? I know Matt's a little under the weather. The Boston Marathon put him down. He burned it up, man. So his body's still in recovery mode here, but can you pick out anything on this, Matt?
Yeah, I'm fighting a little bit of a cold, so I apologize to all our listeners out there. But I'll do what I can to hack through this one for you. It's got a really nice, soft, and subtle nose to it. I'm picking up, of course, that wheat really comes through, and I get some cherry with it, and also a little bit of honeysuckle on the nose.
Yeah, there's a sweetness to it. It's kind of weird because I almost like pick up a little spiciness coming through on the nose, which for a 95 wheat, I just wouldn't expect that. But I do get a lot of that sweetness coming through, Matt. Not honeysuckle, but honey definitely, which is pretty close, I guess. But yeah, I definitely get that honey note coming through there. It's unique because we always drink bourbon or rye, and we may, get a wheated bourbon, but we, you don't drink a 95% wheat whiskey. So that's really cool. So Greg, in terms of the notes on your side, I mean, what do you get when you nose this one?
Well, I'll tell you true that I'm pretty much in agreement with you folks. I get some notes of the cherry that you talk about. I think there's fruity characteristics in there. And, I talk about notes like soft honey, which would be, very close to the honeysuckle that you folks are talking about. So,
right.
Again, this product comes to the shelf at 100 proof. So,
right. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for pointing that out. I forgot. And this is a soft red winter wheat. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So, which I don't know. I mean, are there other wheats? And I hate to sound stupid, but are there other varieties of wheat that are actually used in whiskey production?
Well, there are other wheats available, but actually this one is one that actually produces a superior product compared to others. So we stuck with the soft red winter wheat for this particular brand.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, because I was going to say, I think for me, when I think of wheated bourbon, I think of Maker's Mark, and I guess there's the red winter wheat. So it just sticks in my head that a wheated bourbon is automatically made with red winter wheat. So Greg, let's talk a little bit. Now we've talked a little bit about the whiskey that we're drinking, at least in terms of the nose. Let's talk about you. So let's talk about your past, where you came from, and how you got into the industry. But and your story's, it's great. But we'd love our listeners to hear it. So if you don't care, just take as much time as you'd like and kind of tell us how you got started and how your journey progressed to where you are now.
Okay, sure thing. So really for me, I'm actually in my 43rd year in the industry.
Wow.
And it started,
That's awesome.
It started way back in 1978. So really I got into the industry with really pure dumb luck for all practical purposes. Back then I was in 1978, in the spring of 78, I was graduating from the University of Cincinnati with a chemical engineering degree. And back then folks actually came to campus to recruit for open positions that they had at their facilities. And as it was, Seagram's, Joseph E. Seagram's and Sons was recruiting. to fill positions that they had at the Lawrenceburg, Indiana distillery. So long story short is, I went through that process and was lucky enough to be offered a job. But frankly, day one, when I walked through the gate, I had no idea what I was getting into. The only thing I knew for sure that I was 23 years old and I was going to work for a company that made whiskey. And I thought, well, that's really pretty damn cool. And fact of the matter is, 43 years later, it's still pretty damn cool. But
oh yeah, no kidding. Yeah, that's the Bourbon Life is our name, and that's what we aspire to. But so you've definitely been living that for quite a while, which is awesome. So you went to school in Cincinnati. You guys are having a great season. Not to jump off on the football, but yeah, fingers
crossed. Yes, sir.
Well, Kentucky was having a really good season until this past weekend, but it's funny how that happens. Yeah. But yeah, so are you originally from Cincinnati or this area, or?
I am. Yeah. I'm a homeboy. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. So
I grew up on the west side, went to Elder High School, then University of Cincinnati, and then joined Seagram's after I graduated. So.
Gotcha. And you are still in Cincinnati, even though you're working with Old Elk, which is out in Fort Collins, Colorado. You actually still reside in Cincinnati. Is that correct?
Yes. So I commute as necessary. Fortunately, I'm very close to all the products that I produced for Old Elk prior to joining them full time in 2017. So I'm able to do all the sensory analysis of our products, as well as all the blending here at the house. And then when it comes to harvesting barrels, I select the ones that we want to harvest from Lawrenceburg after I've done sensory. And then we ship those to Fort Collins, where they break them down into the blends that I create, or into the four categories of whiskey that we bring to market that we're tasting through tonight. So all the bottling and blending is done in Fort Collins, and we also have a craft distillery in Fort Collins that produces about 125 barrels a year. But yeah, so me being in Cincinnati actually works out quite well because I'm very close to the probably 12 or 13,000 barrels that I produced for Old Elk.
Wow.
While I was at MGP.
So you started there in 78. It was the Joseph Seagrams and Sons. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So you started out, what capacity when you started? What were you doing?
Well, one of the things that really I owe my whole career to is the training program that I went through under the Joseph B. Seagrams and Sons umbrella. So, the training, if you worked for Seagrams, your training was never over. You were getting trained literally the whole time you were employed by them. And for me, that training program lasted 24 years. So from 1978 to 2002, which is when Seagrams got out of the business entirely, defined my training program under Joseph B. Seagrams and Sons. But one of the really, and just to really, I guess, reiterate, is that one of the things I didn't know when I walked through the gate day one is that I was actually going to get the best training in the world from Seagrams relative to becoming a master distiller. But to answer your question more directly, it didn't matter who you were when you walked through the gate. It didn't matter how old you were, what your background was, what your experience was. Everybody that started the Seagram program started at the bottom. So for me, I started, pardon me, as an entry-level supervisor. And my very first job was to supervise the coppersmith craft group and the electrician craft group. That facility, when I started, we had 13 different bargaining units. And so I was put in charge of the electricians and coppersmiths right out the gate. So, that's a story all in itself. If you can imagine
a chemical engineer. I mean, chemical engineering degree.
23-year-old.
23-year-old.
Yeah,
And you're
in charge of this.
So here I am. I'm a 23-year-old greenhorn right out of school, and I'm put in charge of managing two craft groups that
Sure.
Majority of those folks were my dad's age. They were all seasoned,
Right.
highly accomplished craftsmen, and you can just imagine how that first year went. It was
yeah, I can't even begin to imagine.
I got all the training, I guarantee you that. So but that when I talk about getting the best training in the world, that was literally that was planned on Seagram's behalf, because what they did, you joined at the bottom, you joined in the basement, and then you had to migrate through every department in the distillery, warehouse, maintenance, engineering, production, utilities. And what they wanted you to do is they wanted you to get an exposure to all the departments, so that you had a realization of how all those departments had to work together to produce world-class whiskey at the end of the day. But really, more than that, it was all about either challenging you or testing you or giving you the ability to learn people skills. And today, I will say that no college program teaches people skills.
Right.
And that was really by design. That was the crux of the Seagram training program, is they wanted to challenge you in every one of those different positions in the distillery to show how you can manage and handle people. And I tell you true, that training is what made me the person I am today. It really,
that's
is.
great. So, and that started in 78. So you were there, and then 2002, that's when I guess some things changed for Seagram's at the distillery. But then you became Master Distiller in 2002. Is that correct?
Yes. So Seagram's sold all their brands in 2002. Pernod Ricard and Diageo jointly acquired all the Seagram brands, and then as part of that acquisition, Pernod Ricard wound up owning the Lawrenceburg, Indiana distillery. So they managed and ran that distillery for about 8 years, 2002, probably up to about 2009. And about that time, Pernod actually acquired another brand in the business, and through that acquisition wound up with 2 distilleries and 2 bottling houses, and really only had capacity for one of each. So they had to do a study between our bottling house and our distillery and the other company's distillery and bottling house. And as it was, we wound up on the short end of that stick, and we're put up for sale again. And
oh man!
So in 2008, 2009ish, we were acquired by a rich gentleman from Trinidad, Lawrence Dupre, and that's when we became LDI, Lawrenceburg Distillers, Indiana. And so we were under that umbrella for about 4.5 years. Sadly, his company, or companies, he had many companies in Trinidad, but about 2011 is when the economy kind of went to hell in a handbasket.
Sure, right.
And so as a result, some of his companies were taken over by the Trinidad government, and the government had to support those companies. One of them was banking. He had the largest bank in Trinidad, and to keep the Trinidad economy from really suffering greatly, they had to prop up his bank. And as such, they used his other companies as collateral or assets. But again, the long story short is under LDI, we were one of the profitable companies, and the government sold it so that they could get back some of the money that they had pumped into the bank. And that at that point, which was 2012, we became MGP.
So you've gone through. I mean, when you were there, obviously you went through a lot of changes, and then in the transition, it went from you all distilling a lot of the Seagram's products there to actually going into contract distilling. Is that correct? Is
Yeah,
that really how the Okay.
absolutely. So really, 2002 is when the facility started becoming contract distillers. So you had
Okay.
Diageo and Pernod, the two companies split the brands. So Pernod owned the facility, but we continued to produce all the brands that Diageo purchased on a contract
Okay.
basis. Then in 2008 or 9, when we became LDI, we lost all brand affiliation with all of the Seagram brands because, obviously Pernod sold us. We
Right.
were already contracting for Diageo.
Mm-hmm.
So, at that point in 2008, 2009 is when we became 100% contract distillers.
Okay.
Now, fortunately, we were able to keep Diageo and Pernod as our two largest customers, but we still had a lot of plant capacity left that we wanted to fill to make us more profitable. And that's really when we really aggressively pursued, the craft arena
Right.
relative
Right.
to being contract distillers for that group. And over that 4.5 year period, we probably went from maybe a half a dozen third-party contract customers to probably a couple hundred.
Wow.
And as you know, Lawrenceburg has really wrote the book on contract distilling,
Yeah.
really from
You know,
2008 till current.
Yeah, and it's kind of unique because it's a distillery that's huge, obviously, and but it's a place where nobody used to. You couldn't go and visit and tour, and but almost anybody that drinks bourbon at any point in time has had the product from there. Whether most of the time, obviously, contract distilled under another brand's name or something. Of course, now they're putting out their own brands. But it's really unique that the concept that MGP came up with and how that happened. So did that have any impact on you as terms of master distiller with your day-to-day job, switching things from Seagram's focus to going to the contract distilling and focusing with other people?
No, not really, because we were, we were able to maintain all the methods and all the
Okay.
quality aspects that we were taught under the Seagram umbrella. So
Right.
we carried all of that knowledge forward to all of the new owners and continued to produce the same mash bills that we did under the Seagram umbrella that went into all their brands. So
Right.
so from that aspect, no, there wasn't really any real changes. I think one of the things that makes Old Elk unique is when they came to me, was it back in 2013-ish? They actually wanted custom mash bills. They didn't want the regular 4 or 5 mash bills that we were really producing for everybody else. And
Right.
so that really was my first opportunity to build custom mash bills from the ground up, unrestricted relative to price.
Yeah.
And that's really what makes Old Elk different than all of the other brands out there that have purchased product from the Lawrenceburg distillery.
Yeah, and we'll definitely dive into that a little bit deeper in the second round. I just didn't want to start that road,
No problem.
going down that road,
No problem.
and then end up 35 minutes into the first session and be like, wait, we need to take a break. But so we do need to go back and talk about the whiskey, Matt.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of the palate and the finish, what do you get on this sweet whiskey?
It's really flavorful. I think a lot of the flavor, sometimes I've noticed that when you drink, or at least for me, when I'm drinking something that especially has a rye content or a good amount of rye in it, what I'm tasting is predominantly the rye. So when I'm drinking a wheat whiskey, it's not that you're tasting so much the wheat as you aren't tasting the rye. So you're tasting almost what isn't there, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
But with this wheated whiskey, it really gives a chance for the wheat to shine and for a lot of the subtle flavors that sometimes get overpowered to come through. Like I'm picking up a lot of good sweetness coming from the oak, I think. The wheat is definitely present, but actually on the palate, I'm getting it to be a little bit more floral. I'm picking up like some rose and some hibiscus. on the palate itself. It's packed with a lot of flavor. It's very sweet. It's got a nice little bit of heat with it, but I certainly wouldn't call it overpoweringly hot or anything. It drinks really, really well.
Yeah, I'm just really surprised in terms of the like a spiciness, you know. And I said originally when I took a note when I nosed it, I picked up maybe a little what I detected to be spiciness and thought, well, no, I'm just kind of crazy. But as I drink it, you know, I can feel the finish lingering on my tongue. There's a little bit of a spiciness to it, which kind of surprised me again because it's a wheat whiskey. I love the mouthfeel of this though, you know, because it just coats. And are these non-chill filtered?
Yes,
Greg,
all of
or-
our products
yeah.
are intentionally non-chill filtered. We wanted
Yeah,
them
and I
to
was gonna
be
say,
authentic, and we wanted
Sure.
to capture all the color and flavor that we could by not chill filtering.
yeah, and you can see, you know, when you give it a spin in the glass, how it clings and the legs that run
you
down.
get some
So
nice
it's,
ones.
yeah,
Mhm.
no doubt about that. It's really nice, and that provides that nice coating and things in your mouth. But yeah, I don't know that I've ever had, Matt. Can you recall if have we had an actual wheat
Yeah,
whiskey? Did Old Dominic or
Old Dominic had a predominantly one, but we had a Texas from Lone Elm.
oh, okay,
It had
okay,
a 90-10, I believe.
okay. I was gonna say
90% wheat, 10%
I was
barley.
thinking back today, and I could not remember having a predominantly wheat. So it's not. I mean, it's not something that a lot of distilleries, you know, really do, Greg. And I guess is that really go back to the fact? Is it just more difficult to use to distill a full wheat whiskey?
It is actually, and you know, as you folks know, I mean, we made the 95% rye whiskey, 5% malt whiskey mash bill famous in Lawrenceburg, and
Right.
rye whiskey mash bills with that high content of rye are technically very, very difficult to produce and achieve a world class quality product. So we learned to do that over probably a 30-year period in Lawrenceburg. Foaming is always a major contributor to quality defects. Rye has a penchant to foam like crazy.
Oh, okay.
It's very difficult to ferment because it's a very viscous mash when you cook it. And we learned over probably a 30-year period that you know how to navigate those difficulties so that we could continue to have quality products day in and day out.
Right.
Well, as it turns out, the 95% wheat actually has similar difficulties when you cook it and ferment it. And as I don't know if luck would have it, but as experience would have it, everything we learned about how to navigate the difficulties with rye actually carried over to being able to produce a very high wheat content wheat whiskey and achieve a really nice quality characteristics day in day out.
Well, it is unique. You know, it does have some characteristics like a bourbon, but it's obviously just its own unique type of product. I really enjoyed it. Matt, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's really great, really flavorful, very approachable. I think there's a lot there to pick out in terms of the flavor, and it drinks really well. And just the viscosity on it, when you swirl it around the glass, it's just got a really great cling. I think it's a really great product, Greg.
Yeah, I would just want to reiterate that you know I think you guys hit the nail on the head. And one of the things that struck me because I had never had experience with a high wheat wheat whiskey mash bill or the high wheat content bourbon mash bill that we're going to try here in a little bit. But what struck me is really, I guess, a surprise. Maybe it shouldn't have been, but because of the no corn or the low corn contents in both those mash bills, it actually did let characteristics that I've never seen before really come to the front. So it makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Well, Greg, I tell you what, we're at the end of round one, so let's take a quick break. We'll get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more with Greg Metz, the Master Distiller, at Old Elk Distillery in just a minute. So everybody sit tight and we will be right back.
The Stave Restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise right here in the heart of bourbon country. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day that features an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, the Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring the local distilleries. Be sure to check them out online at thestavekentucky.com or at Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky.
Located just east of Lake Tahoe and the Sierra Nevada mountains, Frey Ranch Distillery was founded by fifth-generation Nevada farmers. Our grain-to-glass bourbon is made using a 4-grain mash bill, including a non-GMO corn, rye, wheat, and barley, all of which is 100% sustainably grown on the 1,500-acre Frey Ranch. And our commitment to excellence shows with a recent gold medal win at the 2020 Whiskies of the World and USA Spirits competitions. Find out more at www.freyranch.com. All right, everybody, welcome back for round 2 of the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Bespoken Spirits. I'm your host, Mark, and with me, as always, is my good friend, live in the Bourbon Life Studios, otherwise known as my basement. It's my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing, man?
You make it sound so glamorous when you say my basement.
My basement.
This is the Bourbon Life Studios we're in
Bourbon
here.
Life Studios. Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. That's
I'm
right.
in one wing, you're in the other. I'm in the estuary, you're in the observatory. I don't know.
There we go. I like that. I'm in the tower. I'm up in the tower.
I'm doing good, Mark. I'm glad to be back for round or session 2. And we've got our great guest back with us again. Greg Metze, Master Distiller at Old Elk Distillery out in Fort Collins, Colorado, though he is coming to us and to you all from Cincinnati. Greg, welcome back for round 2.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah. Looking forward to it again.
Yeah. Well, thanks. We had a great time in round 1. We got 2 more to go. So this is going to be really good. All right. So this round, we're going to drink through 2 different things, but do you want to tell everybody what we have poured up, Greg, on that first taste?
Absolutely. So, we're moving on to the next category that Old Elk brings to market. It's our Wheated Bourbon. And again, we've chosen through the mash bill to be different than everybody else in the industry, and we've gone large on the wheated content. This particular mash bill is 51% corn, the minimum, 45% wheat, just about the maximum, and then 4% malt to get the conversion going.
Okay.
And then
that's that.
Yeah. Then following that, we're going to move on to Old Elk Flagship Bourbon mash bill, which again is a very custom mash bill relative to what's on the shelf. It's a very high malted barley content bourbon mash bill. So we can talk about that more later when we get to it. But
when we get to it,
let's just check out this Wheated Bourbon right off the bat.
Yeah. Matt, what do you get on the nose on this one, man?
Right away, I can tell there's a little bit more spice coming through on the nose on this one, on the wheated. I think that that addition of the corn kind of brings out a little more heat to it. I don't pick up like the same floral qualities that we had in the wheated whiskey, but that's certainly not a bad thing. It's not the wheated, and I really enjoyed the floral qualities of that wheated bourbon. But I get like a good amount of corn. I'm getting like cornbread coming through, that fresh baked cornbread smell and aroma that I sometimes get. Maybe a little bit of like a sweet confectioner sugar as well, like a baked, some sort of like a baked candy corn or something, kind of like that smell that you might smell from like a candy shop.
Matt, you know what's great? Well, I guess I should say, I don't think we said this one's 92 proof. Is that right, Greg?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So 92 proof on this one. But when I smell this, the initial smell I get is bubblegum. I know that's crazy. And Matt, you talked about confectioner sugar. So maybe to me, what you're picking out is confectioner sugar. You know, it triggers that memory back to me for that Topps baseball gum, you know, the Topps baseball cards, the gum. But yeah, that was kind of one of the things that jumped out of me was that sweetness that comes across almost as a bubble gum. I do pick out a little spiciness on this one, even though it's still just corn and wheat. Matt, I wish I could pick out the cornbread like you say you do. I just never am able to pick that out. I'm gonna have to work on that. Greg, what about you? What do you get on the nose on this one?
Well, for me, I get a little bit of toffee in there, actually.
Okay.
I'd see that.
And I agree with you folks on the slight spice, because I think there is, remarkably, there is some clove characteristics in there, in the absence of rye completely. So it's interesting. And again, I think that goes back to what I said earlier, is that, because there's a minimum amount of corn, it actually lets some of the wheat characteristics come to the front that maybe we haven't all seen before.
Yep. That makes sense. And so it is notes that we may not normally recognize in a bourbon that's got a lower even wheat content or standard, maybe a rye content to it. But definitely a unique nose on that one as well. But very enjoyable, very pleasant. Really, really like it. Nothing overpowering. No heavy alcohol aromas or anything like that. So very nice. So Greg, let's go back a little bit and we'll talk about the brand. And I just kind of want to set this up a little bit though, because you were working for MGP at the time, and Old Elk was a new brand that had started. So they reached out to you all at MGP. Is that correct? To help them. So can you kind of tell a little bit of that story to set up how the brand got started and how you got with them?
Yeah, sure. So I think it was 2013-ish. Actually, Kurt and Nancy Richardson, our owners, actually the founders of Otterbox phone covers. But
okay,
he's obviously a very entrepreneurial person, and was extremely successful with the Otterbox company that he started. But again, utilizing his abilities to start companies and build companies, he actually decided that he thought he would like to get into the whiskey arena. And so given that, he decided that, he wanted to get in touch with me to actually craft custom mash bills for Old Elk and then produce them for him, which is really, obviously what we did. But, as I got to know Old Elk from 2013 to 2017, when I joined them full time, I mean, the things that were very noticeable to me was that their DNA was number one, to bring world-class quality products to market. Number two was to bring, they wanted to be different than everybody else in the market. So they wanted to bring mash bills that were completely different than you could find on the shelf. And and that's really what we have done. So we've got 4 different categories of whiskey that we bring to the table. We've already tasted through the wheat whiskey. We're tasting through the Wheated Bourbon, and we'll move on to Old Elk Flagship Bourbon, and then we'll finish with the rye whiskey, which is not a custom mash bill, but it's one that's always been near and dear to my heart, because we made it famous, and it's really difficult to craft and produce and create a world-class quality product.
It's near and dear to Matt's heart as well. I can assure you of that. So you're working with Kurt Richardson, and as you said, he founded Otterbox, which I used to have an Otterbox. Well, I've had several different Otterboxes over the years, but what do you know? What was it? Have you ever had a conversation with him as to Greg or Kurt? You've done these other things. Why do you want to get into the whiskey business? I mean, what was it? Has he ever answered that question for you or told you what the driving force was?
Well, not specifically, but if you ever have an opportunity to meet Kurt, he's an incredibly intriguing person. He's if you ever met him on the street, you would never know the wealth that he has. He is extremely down to earth. And he just likes to, he takes pride in starting companies from scratch and then building them, with, all the characteristics of a good company: good people, integrity, honesty, craftsmanship, tradition, you name it. So it's all based on world-class characteristics.
Right.
And the truth be known is that as I got to know Old Elk over that time frame, what really struck out to me was that everybody in the company outside of me were all young, smart, passionate people, driven by Kurt's leadership. So, and that's really what drew me away from a distillery that I spent 38 years at.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So, I mean, you'd been there for so long and you started your career there. You're in a position of master distiller. You'd been there for, at that point in time, I guess 14, 15 years or so. There had to be something really special to make you say, I'm going to leave this job after 38 years and go with this new upstart company. I don't think there's a lot of people out there, Greg, that would take that step, or even what you call maybe a risk. So,
well, I didn't see it as a risk at all. It was, for me, it was really a no-brainer. Again, if you ever have the opportunity to be around the core group of people that are Old Elk, it's noticeable from the get-go that it's a really special group of people, and it's they're driven and they're smart and they're passionate and they're fun, and it I don't know. And the other big thing that drew me was that I was going to have the ability to be on the ground floor of something really special, and and as it turns out, so far it's working up that to that level. But it also really sort of encapsulates my career, because I was for 38 years and in the trenches master distiller my whole career. I was out in the plant with the operators and troubleshooting problems and overseeing the production and fermentation and all that. So I was never, for 38 years, I was never part of sales or marketing or distribution. And for me, the last really 3 or 4 years has really been all about starting the brand from the ground up, achieving distribution in all 50 states, and then being associated very closely with the sales and marketing group. So for me, that's a whole new arena for me, and I've learned a lot. I don't claim to know most of what I should know. And it's but really,
it also gave you. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I can say it just has really been exciting for me to, see the other side of the business that I hadn't seen for the 38 years I spent in the distillery.
And I would think there had to be a lot of appeal for a guy who has honed his craft and has done what you've done and did what you did at MGP and Seagram's, to have someone say, hey, look, we want to do something custom and super unique, and we really want your expertise to guide us and lead us through that and help us develop these mash bills that no one's ever done before, and to give you that freedom and carte blanche to do what you wanted to do. I mean, that had to have a lot of appeal.
It absolutely did. I mean, it was an honor. It was a thrill.
Sure.
And, here we are 4, 5, and 6 years later with the products we're looking at, and getting to see the results of, the opportunity that they gave me to produce products like we're tasting tonight. So, absolutely.
So let's talk. Let's talk about the taste and the finish on this, the palate and the finish on the wheated bourbon. So Matt, I'm going to throw it to you again, of course, as always.
I really am picking up that toffee now, Greg, that you talked about. It's really, really prominent on the nose, and I'm getting it especially on the palate too. I'm thinking like it's almost like the toffee that you would get from like an upside down cake, that kind of caramelized toffee layer on the top or bottom, depending on which way you look at the cake itself. But I also, there's some heat, there's some spice coming through. It's like a cinnamon that I'm picking up on this as well. A little bit of cinnamon, maybe like a touch of clove in there. But it has more spice than the wheated whiskey that we drank in the first round, even at a lower proof point.
Yeah, I agree with that, Matt. I'm definitely getting some spiciness, but I'm just, again, it's that viscousness in the mouth, the coating. It's, I love that feeling. But also the sweetness on this one just is absolutely, I mean, it's crazy how sweet it's almost like having a piece of candy. I mean, because it is so sweet, and I love that. But that spiciness kicks in too, Matt. The cinnamon, like you said, it's not like one of those cinnamon red hots, I've talked about before on some bourbons that have that effect. But this just it's almost like to me, it's like a brown sugar or maybe a brulee sugar on the taste. And then the finish, just that spiciness, it kind of fluctuates back and forth between sugary sweetness and that spiciness. So, which again, I would not expect that spiciness, and the lingering finish just is something I would not expect, Greg, on a on a high wheat bourbon. So what about you, Greg? What in terms of the palate? What do we miss?
Well, I don't think you missed much. I mean, at times I get maybe a little bit of almond characteristic, but I'm in total agreement with you guys on the toffee and the spice. I don't know. It's just a very pleasant mouthfeel. It's rich. It's got nice balance.
Yes.
Of course, it has all the nice, caramel and vanilla and oak characteristics that you expect in a good whiskey. And one of the things I found about the wheat bourbon and the wheat whiskey, we thought we were going to bring them to market at 4 years old. And when I sampled them both at 4 years old, neither one of them was ready. They just didn't have enough barrel note to carry them because of the low or no corn content. And what I found ultimately was that at 5 years old, the wheat bourbon was ready, and but the wheat whiskey required 6 years. And both both of these products are going to get better as they achieve more maturity.
Right.
For bourbons, for me, and where we age them, bourbons like traditional bourbons, the sweet spot for the Lawrenceburg area maturation, in my opinion, is 4 to 8 years. In the case of these wheated bourbons and wheat whiskeys, I think their sweet spot's going to be 5 to 10 years old. So I think they'll get better as they get older.
Yeah. Great. Well, that was delicious, and I can see that one being a little dangerous for me. Absolutely love the flavor on it. Easy to drink, 92 proof, and very, very enjoyable. So we should probably move on though to our second pour for this session. So, Greg, you want to tell everybody what our second round or second pour is in this round?
Yeah. So this one is going to be the Old Elk Flagship Bourbon, and this is actually the first custom mash bill that I produced for Old Elk. When we first met again back in 2013, this was the first mash bill that they wanted me to produce, and they only gave me 2 words to work with. They said, "We want the product to be smooth and easy." That was it. That was the end of the meeting. So I thought, wow. And again, this being my first opportunity to craft a custom mash bill, it was like giving a painter an open palette. It's like, wow, this is great. And I wasn't restricted by the cost of the mash bill, which was even better. So really from there, I just leveraged my experience. I knew to get smooth and easy that I had to get the malted barley content way up in that mash bill. And in the back of my mind, I also knew that all of the other mash bills that I produced over my career always had some degree of rye in them for a really nice spice characteristic.
Right.
And to get that character to come through in the distillate, it takes a minimum of 15% rye in the mash bill to achieve that note. So really from that point on, it was reverse math. I took the corn content of the minimum for a bourbon, 51%, factored in the 15% rye I needed to get that little spice characteristic. And that left me room for 34% malted barley. So if I'd had more room for malted barley, I'd have probably taken it. But
oh gosh, wow, yeah.
But again, at 34% malted barley, that's probably 4 to 6 times higher than anything else on the shelf in the bourbon category.
Right. And then this one drops down to 88 proof. Is that right?
Yes, and that was very intentional on my part because I wanted the proof to be in the premium range relative, to the proof in the product, but I didn't want the proof so high that it would start interfering with the smooth and easy characteristics that they asked me to achieve for them. So,
gotcha.
Again, that was very intentional.
And the age on this one is it?
It's a minimum of 4. All our products,
Okay.
We haven't launched. We don't have anything that's below 4, but actually, what we're tasting tonight is probably closer to 6.
Oh, okay. All right, great, Matt. So what do you pick up in terms of the nose on this one?
So on the nose with this one, I get 3 very prominent aromas. And I might sound crazy here.
If you say what I think you're going to say, I'm going to be really happy. But say it.
The first thing I get is vanilla, and then I'm picking up some almond and bananas. I get a lot of banana on the nose. To me, this noses a lot like vanilla wafers and bananas is what I'm picking up, and maybe a little bit of cocoa. I think that could be coming from the barley content.
That barley, yeah.
But I get a lot of banana, vanilla, and almond.
Okay, see now, Matt, the power of suggestion, you just kind of threw me completely off because I was going to say something so crazy, but when I had nosed this several different times, I actually smelled a green apple Jolly Rancher, which I know that sounds insane, but there was something about the sweetness. It just reminded me of those little candies from when I was younger. But now you said bananas, and that's what's sticking out to me primarily is the banana on this. So Greg, Matt obviously got it right and I was way off.
I don't think so.
No, you know what? There's no wrong answer because everybody has a palate and they're like fingerprints. Right. They're all different. So things that I see are going to be different than what Matt sees and what you see. And there's no wrong answers. For me personally, I agree on the vanilla and the caramel for sure. The almond, I agree. For me, it comes across more of an amaretto, but I get a lot of maple, frankly.
Oh, okay.
But again, everybody's palates are different, which makes it fun.
Very, very, very nice. So now, Greg, you guys are doing. I mean, these are barrels that you helped Old Elk lay down while you were still at MGP. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep. I think I produced about 12 to 13,000 barrels for Old Elk while I was Master Distiller at the Lawrenceburg Distillery. But so I absolutely can speak to the quality of all these products because I oversaw it as we produced it.
So are they still laying down product for you guys then to age there in Indiana?
Or we may be doing some in the very near future. To date, we've been working off everything that I produced.
Okay, all right.
But in the event that we ask them to produce more, I'll certainly have a hand in some form or fashion of overseeing that process and for sure evaluating the distillate when it's finished before it goes into the barrel.
I got you. So now with the facility out in Fort Collins, is there any, is the goal to actually get production there at some point and actually start replicating what you all have done here?
Yes, we would love to get a full scale distillery built in Fort Collins in the future that would, take care of all of our production needs. Frankly speaking, our business plan has been to build the brand first and build the distillery later. And we're about 4 years in on building the brand. So, we've actually, we do have some distillery designs. We've actually have purchased some equipment. So, yes, to answer your question, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Exciting. So how is the stuff that you're producing out there with just you said you have 120 barrels a year?
Yeah, it's
size operation.
It's a small craft distillery, and so we're producing a variety of other mash bills besides what I've introduced tonight, and I think a lot of those. I don't know if you're familiar, but we actually have a really, really nice tasting room in Fort Collins called the Reserve. And, and a lot of the products that we produce in the craft distillery out there are really well suited for that tasting room. So
Nice. Sounds like a road trip to Colorado is is on the agenda, right? So now, Greg, you guys, I understand you all use kind of a unique process in terms of your proofing. Can you talk about that process and what's called and how you guys do it and what the thought process is
yes,
behind that is?
so again, that goes along with Old Elk's DNA on being different. So whenever we reduce from barrel proof to bottling proof, we actually use something called a slow cut proofing process. We didn't invent it, but we certainly adopted it. And the idea behind that is that whenever you lower proof from higher proof to lower proof, it actually is a heat liberating reaction. So you're putting heat back into your product as you add water to reduce the proof. And as far as I know, we're the only one in the industry using this process. But what it does is when you add all the water in one step or two steps, you release all that heat into your product all at once. And it can actually be enough that it actually drives away or boils off some of the really delicate congeners that you work so hard to produce through your mash bills and cooking, fermentation, distillation, and maturation. So what we do to try to help preserve those is rather than do it in one or two steps, we do it in many, many steps. And what that does is that in every given step, it just limits the amount of heat that goes into the product. So, at the end of the day, we use the same amount of water that everybody else uses to go from barrel proof to a specific bottling proof. But by doing it many, many, many steps, the amount of heat that goes in is much, much smaller. So you don't necessarily have the ability to drive those really delicate congeners off. And we adopted that intentionally to try to preserve, some of the really delicate, high volatile congeners that are in the products.
Now, was that a process? Had you guys used that at any point at MGP, or was that something you just knew about or had just experimented with and figured out?
No, we never used it at MGP. We actually learned of it through Nancy Fraley, who's a big name in blending and so forth. And she's talked about that process over the years, and we adopted the process and actually developed our own specific variant of that process. So again, we didn't invent it, but we certainly adopted it.
Yeah, you're perfecting it.
Well, at least for us. I mean, so it does. I will say that it does help the products because you're able to achieve some of those really delicate congeners. And
sure.
So it's worthwhile. It's extra steps and it's extra cost, but if you're looking to develop or bring to market the best and highest quality products that you can make, you're willing to do that.
Yeah, definitely. So let's get back and talk about this. Now, it says it's a blended whiskey, Greg. So can you kind of explain what that means? And
yeah, that's really pretty much a technicality. It's a TTB requirement. The very first Old Elk blend, going back 6 years ago, one of the things that Old Elk did is after I crafted the flagship bourbon mash bill, they actually took that same mash bill to a distillery in Colorado and another distillery in New York, and had two other distilleries produce it on a limited basis. So the original blend was a blend of the same mash bill, but produced at 3 different locations. Well, the TTB rules stipulate that if the components in the blend don't come from the same state, you have to call it a blend.
I got you.
But so literally speaking, it is a straight whiskey. There's no caramel additives. There's no flavors.
Right.
It's
Right.
purely a technicality.
I got you. All right. So let's get back and talk about, because we're at the end of round 3 here, but let's talk about the palate and the finish. Matt, what do you get on that?
I'm getting on the palate like some walnut is coming through,
Okay.
vanilla, the caramel. Again,
Yep.
that toffee that we talked about earlier comes through on this, and I gotta say it again that it's like banana bread, like chocolate chip banana bread for me. I think I get a little bit of cocoa, a little bit of chocolate coming through from the barley, but just a really sweet like banana bread. I think that might be a little the predominant characteristic I'm getting. But Mark, I did, after you said that, the green apple, I picked up some of that too on the nose and maybe a little bit on the palate. Some of just a nice ripe, crisp fruit.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm not completely crazy, Matt. I appreciate you. I'm going to pay you $20 once we're done here, just so I didn't,
Hey, anytime, friend.
for making me not look so bad. Right. So, but yeah, the vanilla caramel, those are my two things, right, Matt? So I agree for sure on that. But that banana has stuck out to me, like you said, and it does. And it has to be that malted barley that gives that kind of dark chocolate or cocoa kind of flavor to it with that banana. So it's really, really a unique flavor profile for sure, Greg. I really, really enjoy it. So what else do we get on that, or what else do you get on the palate and the finish?
Well, I mean, again, for me, we were shooting for smooth and easy, and I would love to know if you think we hit that mark. First of all,
I'd say you're sharpshooting there. You're batting 1,000.
Yeah,
No,
and at 88 proof, I said the wheated bourbon could be dangerous. At 88 proof, this one, and it does have a little bit of spiciness to it. It's not hot to drink. There's a nice little spiciness to it, but goodness gracious, I could definitely see sitting around with friends and drinking this one, and yeah.
So yeah, I mean, for our tasting panel, I mean, we had folks that for me, I see a lot of maple, and I see some of that almond, but other folks on our tasting panel were seeing things like the chocolate that you folks have talked about. Some of them saw some coconut, some raw bran. So there's a variety of different opinions on what you see in the product. And again, it's everybody's palates are different, so it's always interesting to hear what other people think.
Well, I'm definitely a fan of the wheated bourbon and this blended bourbon. No question about it. Both very tasty, very unique. I really enjoy them. Matt, what do you think?
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more.
Definitely. All right, so let's get a break in. Let's get a word from our sponsors as I pour up our next pour, and then we'll be back with more with Greg Metz, the Master Distiller with Old Elk Distillery, in just a minute. So everybody sit tight, and we'll be right back.
Three Chord's line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The Three Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they call Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.threechordbourbon.com.
Spirits of French Lick crafts their spirits using only the finest agricultural product that has defined character, following their motto, respect the grain. They lead the way in representing the quality of the Hoosier artisan distilling process while paying tribute to its inseparable past. By implementing best practices from those early times, combined with modern touches, Spirits of French Lick has created a truly unique place in the industry. Spirits of French Lick products are distributed throughout Indiana, Kentucky, and Missouri, and can also be purchased online through Sealbox at sealbox.com. Visit spiritsofFrenchlick.com to learn more information, and make sure to follow them on Facebook and Instagram.
All right, everybody, welcome back for the third and final round or period or session or whatever you want to call it of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark. And with me, as always, live in the Bourbon Life Studios is my good friend, my buddy, my pal, Matt. Matt, how you doing out there, man?
Oh, Mark, I'm doing really great, man. Looking forward to our exciting conclusion here with one of the legends, one of the titans of the industry here, Greg Metz, the Master Distiller from Old Elk Distillery. And I've going to forgo our small talk here, Mark, because I want to get right into this.
That's fine.
because
Go right
It's
ahead.
not often I get a chance to drink 95.5 rye
Yeah.
with the guy that made the 95.5 rye. So, Greg, why don't you go ahead and just let us know what we've got poured up here for round 3.
Yeah, so this is absolutely a mash bill that we made famous in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. It originated as a Seagram mash bill. As you said, it's 95% rye, 5% malt. It was primarily used as a blending component for all of their brands back in the day. But as we learned how to make this mash bill, which I had alluded to earlier, that technically, it's an extremely difficult mash bill to produce. From a quality perspective, it is extremely susceptible to creating a lot of negative quality characteristics. And to be able to produce it day in and day out and achieve the quality levels that we have, it makes it one of my favorites to produce. And it's always been one that's near and dear to my heart for those reasons. And for the other reasons, it's the real McCoy rye whiskey. Again, there's a lot of rye whiskeys out there, but most of them are 51% rye, not 95. So.
Those barely legal ryes, right?
So
51% Kentucky ryes, I guess they call them.
Again, this one, if you're a rye whiskey drinker, this is it. This is something to.
So Matt,
go ahead.
What do you get, man?
I get that really great bouquet of just nice like cracked rye bread. It takes me back to the bakery, and then it's got a lot of different baking spices come through on the nose. I'm picking up coriander. So coriander to me always has like a nice bright, crisp nose, almost like a little bit of lemon. I always pick up when I think of coriander. So it's got like a touch of like a sour citrus on the nose, and then great cardamom as well. I'm picking up good cardamom and really nice balance with the oak from the barrel in there as well. It's just got a very, very nice, bright bouquet on the nose.
And no mint, Matt?
I'm actually not getting as much mint yet, but it's still airing out a little bit in the glass. So it might come
That's
through.
I was just going to say, it's kind of funny because that's what hit me first was just, it was predominant mint. And now it's like, it's going into this sweeter, almost like a brown sugary mapley type of sweetness on the nose that I'm getting. But that the mint was the first thing that kind of jumped out at me. So, I'm surprised. I thought for sure, man. I thought for sure Matt's going to say mint. Daggone it.
Be something with this cold over here.
The cold. So
Yeah.
Greg, how do we do on the nose? What notes do you get on it?
Well, again, for me, I just get that really nice, bold, clove spice characteristic, and it's just for me, it's just a really nice marriage of that and the vanilla and caramel that comes from the barrel. It's rich, it's pleasing, and it begs you to drink it.
Most absolutely.
Isn't that the truth? Now this one is 95.5 obviously, and this one's 100 proof. Is that right? So it's 100 proof as well, and this one is aged for at least 5 years or more.
Yeah, I think what we're tasting is probably over 6.
Oh, okay, all right. Matt's like, oh, yeah. So now, Greg, with your whiskeys, and I don't know if it may vary depending on which one it is, but do you all go into the barrel at the same proof, 125, or do you vary that up? Do you mix it, go down, or what do you do?
It varies. The flagship bourbon goes in at 115 proof.
Okay.
The wheated bourbon, wheated whiskey, and rye goes in at 120.
Okay. All right. And I guess a wheated whiskey, I don't know. Are the regulations the same for a wheated whiskey as it is for a bourbon?
They are.
Do you?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, it's not something that we deal with on a regular basis, so I didn't know what the requirements were. So you still have to be at that 125 or less. Okay. All right. Well,
thanks for touching on that, Mark. Actually, you brought up a question that I remembered I had earlier. So going back to round 1 and the wheated whiskey, that's new charred oak all the way on that. There's So standard barreling.
Yeah. We use, obviously you have to use all new charred white oak barrels, but and the char levels that we use are number 4 on the sides and number 2 on the heads. That's very traditional.
Oh, okay.
It's a very traditional char in the industry.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And I love the color on all these too. I mean, just everything I've poured in a glass, I just love to look at the color of it. They all just have a very, very nice color, and everything I've poured, I said it in the first round that it just clings to the glass and runs down the legs on all these, Greg. It's just pretty amazing what you guys have done here. It looks like. So
yeah, we've put a lot of work into, bringing extremely high quality to the table. So again, I can't guarantee people will like our mash bills, but anything with Old Elk's name on it from a quality perspective is going to be world class. You can count on that.
So well, what was the process like when you were given the free reign to experiment with different mash bills? Are these mash bills that you've always kind of dreamt up or maybe distilled at one point in the past that you wanted to resurrect, or did you go down a completely different route with this based on characteristics that you thought the company exhibited? How did you come across when you did the custom mash bills?
Well, it was
like the philosophy, and execution.
Yeah, it was really driven by being different than everybody else in market. And, again, the first one that they gave me to work on was Flagship, and they wanted that to be smooth and easy. So, again, I talked about that earlier. I just leveraged, my experience and knowing what certain grains bring to the table, so forth and so on. But, after I'd produced, I think something like 8,000 barrels of that then we all got back together and we had that discussion about, what do you think will be the next, what whiskey could be the next up and coming whiskey. And of course, when we had that discussion 7 years ago, rye whiskey was taking off like crazy. But during that period, wheated bourbons and wheat whiskeys were relatively untouched. There's obviously some very nice products out there in market, but there wasn't a tremendous amount of different mash bills out there. And so, as we talked, I thought the wheat bourbon and the wheat whiskey could be the next generation of the next categories. And if we were going to do that, then I wanted to go large, which is what we did. So we maxed out the wheat content in both those categories intentionally.
So now, Greg, you talked about distilling everything at MGP, and the barrels are there, and the possibility and the hope that you can do everything out in Colorado. So as you guys have been distilling out there, more of a craft type, 120 barrels a year, are you finding that there are advantages or disadvantages to distilling in Colorado versus distilling product in Indiana?
Well, obviously the altitude, changes the boiling points on everything. So it doesn't, it's really the same, but you have to change your parameters accordingly when you're doing your cuts or whatever. If you're doing things based on temperature, the temperature boiling points of the components that you're trying to maybe catch or whatever is hearts, tails, and heads. Those temperatures are going to be different because of elevation than they are in Fort Collins. So, but relative to just dialing in what the new set point has to be, no real differences. I mean, we had some of the best water in the world in Lawrenceburg to mash with and cook with and ferment with. Underground aquifer water that was limestone filtered. Right. But take that to Fort Collins, you've got Rocky Mountain mountain water, which is the key to any water is you have to have no sulfur and no iron is the two big negatives in any water source that you might use. So Fort Collins is known for their breweries. And they, obviously couldn't make good beers without really great water. So we share. They're different, but they're both world-class quality natural resources in Lawrenceburg and Fort Collins relative to the water source.
Gotcha. So with the distillery, as you transition from the barrels at MGP over to your Fort Collins operation, is there any concern, or I mean, have you been able to replicate what you were doing at MGP, or I mean, has there been, in terms of the taste of the distillate and the barreled product? I mean, what has that been a challenge, or is there a concern down the road that things may not match up like they did at MGP, what they tasted like?
No, we've actually have been storing barrels out in Fort Collins, so I harvest them.
Okay.
We take them to a location we have in Fort Collins, and they may age there for 6 months or better before we get them to bottling or blending.
Right.
But what we have found, the aging characteristics are similar, but the challenges for the full scale facility in aging is going to be the arid climate in Fort Collins, and the higher altitude. But what that's going to primarily affect is the angel share losses are going to be higher.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're likely to do, which others have done already in those areas, is do some humidity control and whatnot in the warehouses to help mitigate those higher losses.
Yeah. That makes sense. I'm just trying to think other distilleries out there in Colorado. Matt, we had the Family Jones. They're out in Colorado.
Family Jones in Denver. On the show.
Yeah. And I think that's the only other group that we've had from Colorado on this show. So, but the great thing is there's great whiskey, the great bourbon, great rye, obviously being produced all over the country. Of course, nothing quite compares to the 95.5, right, Matt? So you want to talk some about about what you're getting in terms of the palate and the finish on this one?
I'd love to.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about the mint? It's right there, right at the first sip. I get that nice mint comes right across the front of the palate. And then the spice rolls in. There's a little bit of the peppercorn, kind of a sharpness, I think, from the mint, but it's surprisingly sweet. I pick up a lot of chocolate on this, some sweetness. I'm thinking like it tastes kind of like a York peppermint patty a little bit in some ways to me, with the sweetness. There's some chocolate, there's mint, definitely the nice spiciness from the peppercorn. Definitely the age comes through with the barrel on this. The oak, the vanilla is in there as well. All those really great barrel characteristics that you would pick up from a rye of this age come through as well.
Matt, I don't think I can add anything to that, because as you're explaining it, I was like, yep, there's the mint. And then it's like, oh, it dissipates. There's that spiciness. Yep. Coming across peppercorn, peppermint even. And that sweetness that comes through. It's really, man, it's great. Greg, what about you in terms of the palate and the finish?
Well, I'm going to have to agree with you folks 100%. I think that, it's just a product that brings a lot to the table, and it's very pleasant. It's a great drinker, and it is. Yeah.
Now, Matt, even though this is 100 proof, I think this is one you could probably get in trouble with.
I do believe you're right, Mark.
Yeah, no doubt. So, Greg, let's talk about the bottles and the design and the toppers and everything else that goes into this. I wish, there are times I wish we were doing video so everybody, people could actually see. And I've already posted pictures today actually up on Instagram and Facebook, so everybody could see the bottles and what we're drinking tonight. But can you talk about, the bottle design, the topper design, and really just everything that went into the decision to make this the way it is?
Sure. I mean, to start with, everything that you're presenting there, and obviously the audience can't see it, but it was all done in-house. It was all done by our own people.
Okay.
The topper is really unique and very special, and it's actually a 3D print of an actual elk that is in the office. So it's a 6-point bull, and they took a 3D scan of the antlers and they did a segment, and that's how they created the mold for the topper that you see. And then we incorporated all the right coloring as you see. And the really cool thing about that topper is that we have a single barrel program besides the products that we're looking at tonight. And we can actually customize the top of that, the logo, and the top of that topper for our single barrel customers.
Very
be
cool.
Their store logo or whatever they choose. But again, that was all done in house. The bottles, we call them imperial type design. We wanted it to be rich and classy, almost decanter-like, if not decanter-like. And again,
definitely.
The labels, all that has been done in-house. We have some brilliant minds relative to creativity and whatnot. And so, all the graphics and all the labels, again, is a demonstration of what Old Elk brings to the table with our own staff.
So, Greg, I'm just curious. I think you'd mentioned in the first session that Old Elk at one point actually was an existing brand a long time ago. Is that correct?
It was. It was a pre-prohibition brand, and I believe it was Stitzweiler. But we've used the logo "Born in Kentucky and Resurrected in Colorado," but the mash bills are entirely different. The taste profiles are entirely different. But yes, it was a pre-prohibition brand back in the day.
So is the Old Elk, the lettering, I mean, does that have any connection to the old brand at all, or was this something completely just unique for what you all designed?
That's a great question. I don't really know the answer to that.
Well, I was just wondering, because when I look at this bottle, it's the topper with the antler, and just the label, the lettering, the glass, it looks very, it looks old. It's very classic. It's very stylish. I don't mean old in a bad way, right, Matt. I just mean it looks like something that's been around for 100 years. I mean, it's a very unique. So I just wondered if any of that labeling on the Old Elk, the name on the label and everything, if that was from the old bottles or not.
Yeah, I'm not certain. I don't think there's any connection there, but
okay.
I really can't answer it without knowing for sure. So
yeah. Well, there's homework. So the next time, Greg, when we get back together, we'll get an answer. We'll get an answer to that question. But so now you said you guys do have a single barrel program. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And so how does that work? And I mean, is it something successful that you guys have enjoyed doing?
Oh, absolutely enjoy it. Yeah, it's been really successful. We're much quicker to market than anybody else in the industry. I think we can get cases to the consumer probably in less than 8 weeks, and sooner.
Wow.
In many instances, if they choose to get a custom topper, that adds a couple weeks because it has to go through TTB approval. But
okay.
But no,
interesting.
We offer single barrel in all 4 categories. The ryes are a little more limited, but we certainly offer the single barrels, all at cask strength. Nice. With the Old Elk Flagship, the Wheated Bourbon, and the Wheated whiskey. So, and that's currently that's the only way to get a cask strength product from Old Elk. But we're very proud of our turnaround time, and we've grown from. I think we did maybe 200 barrels the first year. We're going to do 600 plus this year, and then next year we're going to probably maybe double or even maybe triple that. So,
wow. Okay, yeah, that's great. I know Matt was like, when he heard barrel strength, he was like, "Wait, what? You can get this rye at barrel strength? Hold on." I know what he was thinking.
You need somebody to help manage that program.
Oh man! All right, so let's talk about the future. Upcoming things. What's going on? I mean, for you, Greg, personally, you've been in the industry now for 43
Yeah.
years.
Mhm.
So what's the future look like for you personally?
Well, I'm here to stay with Old Elk. I mean, we are all about building this brand and bringing world-class quality products to market. So this year, actually, we started probably leaving, headed to the distributors this week. We have an Infinity blend that I created that will be hitting the shelf in some spots as we speak, but we hope to have it out. It's going to be a limited run, and it's going to be an Infinity blend that I crafted. It's the first one is a sort of a heritage and legacy blend, legacy relative to my 43 years in the industry, and heritage because we incorporated some really nice vintage Kentucky whiskeys in with some vintage Old Elk whiskey that we are going to bring to the table. So I just did a photo shoot on that last week in Fort Collins, and I got to see the package for the first time, and it's incredible. So
nice.
Keep your eyes peeled for that one.
Yeah.
Also hitting the shelf is we have some cask finish products coming to market. We did some tawny port, did sherry, we did Armagnac and cognac. So we've got 4 different cask finish products coming to market that you should look forward to. They're all quite nice. And next year, already working on new blends for next year. We've got a 4-grain blend that will be hitting the shelves. We'll be coming up with another rendition of Infinity blend, and and looking at additional either cask finish or secondary finish products for 2022. So, besides supporting all our other products, we're actually bringing what I would call brand extensions to market to facilitate that whole process. So a lot of fun.
So as the distillery grows, as you guys start working on your own distillery out there in Fort Collins and get it built out, will there be a time, Greg? I mean, do you see yourself actually going out to Fort Collins, or do you think you'll stay in Cincinnati, or how will that work?
Well, I won't move, but I will certainly have a heavy hand in the startup of the new facility, and a heavy hand of transferring what I've learned over my long career to the folks that will be running the new facility. So, one of the things about my training program at Seagram's was it was all passed on from one master distiller to the next to the next. So, for me, it was Larry Ebersole. He trained me for a period of 10 years. And, I don't know that I've got 10 years left to train somebody, but they'll get the fast edition, but they'll certainly get everything that they need to continue making world-class whiskey.
Well, here's one thing I think is really cool, because you talked about the young minds, these young, smart, great, crew that you've got out there. But I mean, at the same time, Greg, I mean, you're obviously, the level of experience and knowledge and impact that you've had on the bourbon industry. I just love the fact that you're able to work in this group, and it's a really cool combination, because it's progressive. Obviously, you're forward thinking, your brand is young, but you come with so much experience and age, and it's such a cool mix of the heritage and the legacy and the commitment to excellence that you brought with you to this new brand that's progressive and looking at ways to grow and change the market with these new brands. I mean, I really think that's very impressive how the model's structured.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, it's been incredibly rewarding. So it's really, we're getting to the point where we're being recognized, and we're going to make a mark in the industry before it's over. So it's incredibly fun and incredibly rewarding.
Yeah. So just real quick, I want to ask you, in terms of speaking about being recognized. I mean, you spent so many years at MGP. MGP was not a customer facing brand. I mean, it was, you made stuff for Seagrams, and then you made stuff you contract distill for other people. So a lot of people did not know who Greg Metze was, even though you were making bourbon that so many people were enjoying and drinking and loving, and they had no idea that it was made under your direction. And now here you are after 4 or 5 years, and you're with Old Elk. So how has that transition been for you now that you're out? You're doing podcasts. I mean, you're becoming, you're somewhat the face of the brand here, Greg. So how has that been for you after so many years of a career that was just dedicated to making whiskey for the brands that you were working for?
Well, it's been a lot of fun, but I'm going to tell you true that the notoriety and the popularity is I have great respect for the people that that respect what I do. But at the end of the day, the way I'm wired is that I take gratification out over achieving something every day. And it can be as simple as cleaning a really cluttered up, messy garage on a Saturday. And at the end of the day, I can stand back and take great gratification and reward out of just cleaning up the dirty garage. So for all the years that I spent in Lawrenceburg, every day I walked out that gate, I knew that I'd made world-class whiskey for many, many brands. And it didn't matter if I got notoriety from that. I took gratification from knowing every day I left the distillery that I produced a world-class quality spirit for several or many brands. And literally that was enough. But the rest of it has been, a lot of fun, and it has been extremely rewarding, I will tell you.
Well, great. Yeah. That's really cool. I'm happy to hear that for you. I mean, I'm happy for you. It's great. I know the notoriety isn't something you sought. You never have, obviously, but it's just nice to see that people are actually finally realizing who you are and the contributions and the things you've done for the industry. So that's, as a bourbon drinker and a fan of bourbon, that to me, it's great to see. So where can our listeners find information about Old Elk? Where can they find your products, Greg?
Well, the best place to start, we have a really nice website, Old Elk. If you go to that, it actually has a store locator that'll direct you to a store based on zip code. We are distributed in all 50 states. We achieved that within the first 2 years of launch.
Wow.
We need to do more work about getting more points of distribution, but that's part of growing, and we're working hard on that. But the best place to start would be that website and the store locator.
Okay. Well, that's great. So Matt, real quick, final thoughts on the rye. I don't even have to ask.
Come on. For real.
I knew I didn't have to ask. I agree. This is awesome. Greg, this is great. So everything we've had tonight, I've really enjoyed. So it's been a great experience. So before we wrap it up though, Greg, is there anything else you want to add or anything you'd like to say before we close it up?
No, I just really want to thank Bourbon Life for having me. Matt and Mark, you've been great. And really, I hope we can do this again sometime. Hopefully face to face, that'd even be better.
Face to face.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree. We're just down in Lexington, Greg. Yeah. So we can definitely make that happen. We've enjoyed it. Matt, before we close it out, anything you want to add?
Greg, thank you so much. This really has been a true delight this evening to be able to share this recording time with you. And I know our listeners are going to feel the exact same way. And I was always curious about Old Elk. So I'm really, really, really grateful to learn more about it. And thank you so much for sharing all your hard work with us.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'm sorry, Greg, we kept you over, but I just love talking to you. Love your stories. Love to hear what you had to say. I mean, like I said before, you've had so much experience in this industry. So it's always great to be able to sit down with someone such as yourself and share those stories and share that information with our listeners as well, because I know they love it and they really appreciate it. So Greg, with that said, thank you very much. We appreciate it. We want to thank all of our sponsors for everything they do for us. And again, we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Bespoken Spirits. And with that said, I'm going to wrap it up. Send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full and may you keep on living the bourbon life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the bourbon life.
Whether it's rye, sour mash Tennessee whiskey, or bourbon, Davidson Reserve has something delicious to offer any whiskey lover's palate. Pick up a bottle of one of our award-winning Davidson Reserve whiskeys from your local retailer today. Visit www.davidsonreserve.com for more information. And cheers to drinking local.